All right. We are recording, but it says reconnecting. So let's see. Now it says resume. Now it says initializing, but I see the recorder with us. Ah. Okay, resume recording. It says it's recording now. Welcome to the blooper reel. Last video, I was attacked by a bee and almost fell off my stool. This time, the recorder decided to land in the main screen, but then in the corner telling me it was not recording. But I think now we're okay. I think you're right. I think we should leave the bloopers. This is very real life. What is happening today?
Yeah, we're talking about interviewing and things happen, things go wrong. How do you bounce back and still maintain your professionalism when technology is working against you?
The retrograde, it's the Wi-Fi, but there's no construction going on today, so I'm safe with that. So like, I think we're okay. All right. All right, number 8 for the year. We did 6 videos, me and you. We did the one with April, the trifecta, talking about internal recruiter, agency recruiter, career coach, how they all work together. Our last video, which will be out soon, was basically sharing what we've built with clients in terms of auditing your role to include AI in your job without replacing yourself and using AI tools to add value to what you do. For anyone who doesn't know, I am Kelly, founder of Allora Collective. I'm a career coach and relocation strategist. We have been helping close to 1,000 professionals since April of 2020 when we launched. With me is Chez Jennings. She is a Allora career coach for, it'll be 3 years in September. She's a tech career specialist across US and Canada. And today we are going to talk, tell me about yourself. I think it makes sense in progression. I think it makes sense in summer. A lot of people are thinking what's next for themselves right now. Maybe they have space to daydream. Maybe they are thinking about what's ahead for the September, November hiring cycle / layoff season, which that's what Q4 has become. But it's a good time to talk about the different versions of Tell Me About Yourself. I did a blog about this. It is my favorite question because I think it gives you the most control over the narrative. I think people sleep on this question and they're intimidated by it. But I think if you prep and practice well, this question can be your biggest advantage.
Yeah.
Right. And the answers that you prepare, you can answer multiple questions with. You can use those narratives that you build across job searches, networking conversations, interviews, career pivots. It's one of the simplest questions, but that's probably why it feels complex or why it feels difficult to a lot of people. So Chez and I are going to not just talk, we're going to model. We're going to do some Tell Me About Yourselves about ourselves.
No pressure.
Sounds like it doesn't make sense, but I know it makes sense. And we're going to be very real with this. We're going to give you our own versions. This is not scripted, but this is how you get comfortable talking about yourself and casually be okay with these things, including bloopers, like last time when the bee flew at my face and, you know, the recorder doesn't want to work. Things like that can happen in interviews. You can lose your place and pause. It's okay. Be a human. It's part of talking about yourself. And it usually pulls people in, I think, to liking you. So here's the thing. The most important thing I think we're going to get from today is that there isn't one Tell Me About Yourself. There's several, right? And if someone says, nice to meet you, tell me a little about yourself, or any version of that question, really what you're telling them is what they should know about you based on who they are. So everything's slightly tweaked for an audience, right? So, Chez, do you want to go first? Do you want to do a quick, who are you and what you do?
Sure, of course. Yeah, it's such a fun topic. And I think to your point, Kelly, about adapting to different audiences, this is not just a professional skill to have. This is also a skill in your personal life, birthday parties, retirement parties, like any life event that you're going to, you're probably going to meet somebody random that's like, who are you? How do you know the so-and-so? Tell me about you. We'll be doing the professional one today, obviously, but you know, it is a muscle and it's one that, you know, we believe everyone should practice. So I'll do my intro. we're doing the quick and dirty one first. So this is, the goal is like 60 to 90 seconds. Quick, tell me about yourself. I'd start with, I'm Shay. I'm the US Tech Careers Coach at Allora. I've spent 13 years in tech recruiting, 3 years in coaching. And prior to joining Allora, my corporate career was agency and then in-house. I've worked for companies like currently at BetterUp. I worked for Reddit. I worked for Coinbase, other high growth tech companies from seed to public. I've been inside hiring at scale, primarily with engineering recruiting, and I work with candidates in North America, US and Canada specifically, on dealing with this current job market, job search strategy, interview prep, helping people to understand how hiring works from the employer side with my clients. And then for my corporate career, I'm working as a recruiter and helping people navigate the interview process. Pretty standard recruiting role there, but I think that's also the competitive advantage that I bring to coaching.
Very nice.
Yeah. I'll stop there. I feel like I could have had a better closeout, but I got my through line in there.
Yeah. So listen, if we didn't know each other and this was a typical scenario and I didn't introduce myself first, but I asked you a little bit about yourself, you could have closed it with, thanks for asking, but hey, tell me a little about you now. Or just, put it back on that person. That's also an interview technique that we teach people. If anyone is watching or listening and hasn't heard of that, if you find that you're in a situation where it seems very question and answer, you can end your answer by asking them a question, and it invites them into the conversation to pull them in.
Yeah.
Okay, so a little bit about me. I kind of did my little debrief at the very beginning, but I founded Allora Collective in 2020, so I'm 6.5 years in. Before that, I spent just over 20 years in recruitment and talent acquisition across the United States and the EMEA region. I'm originally from New York City, which you could probably hear very easily. Then I lived in Los Angeles, Seattle, Amsterdam, and the Netherlands. I am currently enjoying some time in Spain. So I work on global careers, and I spent the latter years when I was on the company side specializing in tech leadership. One of the great things about working on global teams that I've enjoyed is mixing cultures and adapting to those audiences, and I think that's really important. The thing I love most about Allora is I have been able to take the best bits of what I did in recruitment and talent acquisition and really focus on giving people the service they deserve. And a lot of the things we do are things I used to leave the office to do on my mobile. So I am proud of the work that we do. And it would be very hard to trade it for something else because we're able to put the people first. We work with mostly employed professionals across job search, negotiating offers, negotiating promotions, preparing for promotions and performance cycles. We do a lot of career growth and development, figuring out what's next in the long term. And then we also both specialize in transitions and pivots. I particularly have made 4 pivots throughout my career, so I have personal and professional experience there. And I think my unique perspective is the balance that I've had on both sides, not only in the employer side, building programs for companies like General Assembly, building tech recruiting for National Football League, and then working for Booking.com, in addition to the clients I had when I was an agency. But now being a founder and building a small business from the ground up and having control over all those details, working with hiring managers and candidates has just opened the floodgates of information and allowed me to really understand more than I could have if I was still under restraints of a company. So I think the balance that Shay and I bring is fantastic. I brought you in it. I can't help myself. It's just how it goes. So we basically both did a version of us that would be the quick pitch, the starter in a conversation, whether it's at a social event or a networking event or in an interview. There's 3 basic angles I think we should start with when it comes to tell me about yourself. I've blogged about these. We walk people through these. You have a few options when someone says, tell me about yourself. The option we discourage is to repeat your resume or your CV, right? It's not really about repeating your history. It's telling someone something about who you are and importantly, where you want to go next.
Mm-hmm.
And the three kind of fill in the blanks that we use for that would be how you got here, which is your origin story, right? Your overall high level career path that includes the through line that connects you to where you are now, why you're here. So if you're in an interview, it's why are they talking to you right now? Why is it important that they spent 30 minutes listening to you, right? So it's a strategic way of telling them why you're a match for the job and why you belong on the team.
Yep.
And the third one is where you belong.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really good context and a prompt if we're talking about career growth or it's more of a leadership pitch, because you have to include a vision for the path forward in your tell me about myself, in your tell me about yourself. I'm going to do that a lot. I can tell already it's going to happen. I think the mistake that most people make with the origin story is repeating just their resume or going so high level that there's no context.
Right.
And context is everything.
Yeah.
Right. So I think let's just model all three.
Mm-hmm.
Shay, do you want to do the how you got here? Do you want to do that one first?
Yeah, totally. So I'll start with, and this is how I got here for my recruiting career to coaching. But I do think depending on the job, I would potentially fold in more of my early career before recruiting if the industry makes sense. Like I worked in insurance. That's not really relevant for any of the companies that I look at now, but if it was, I might fold that in before my first agency job. So I'm going to throw that out there. So I fell into recruiting. I had my first agency job, which I actually started as a receptionist at the staffing agency because I'd been doing a lot of admin work and I needed something more stable. Childhood friend's mom had been an agency back in the day, Manpower, if anybody knows. It's like
Manpower.
Yes, I was at light industrial staffing specialist was my first agency job, and really enjoyed recruiting, really enjoyed, it was temp staffing at the time, so no one day is the same. A lot of interesting stories from candidates, and I really enjoyed the people component. So I knew that I wanted to continue that. I knew that there was more money to be made in recruitment, and at the time, my commission rates were not that great with my first agency, so I moved on to creative services staffing. So I was working for 24/7, which then connected me with a lot of companies and clients in the tech sphere. So I was placing these candidates at these tech companies. They often stayed full time. They come back to visit the office and be telling us all these amazing things about their job. And I'm like, I think that's the world I want to go into. So set my mind into pivoting into tech. I moved through different startups at that time, basically just got my foot in the door with a very early stage startup, which is maybe another story for another time. I think that's definitely a young person's game. So I'm glad that I did it when I did in my 20s, but kind of hopped around and had a bunch of early stage experiences that I think set me up to build my resume just in tech. And then I was able to transition that into working for Lever, the HR tech company, which I feel like really put me on the map for sort of my greater recruitment career. I built a lot of my best practices. I was working with co-founders, which led me to Reddit, which was a great experience. I worked there 2 separate stints, both pre and post IPO. And during my time at Reddit, I feel like it really sort of started to ignite this entrepreneurial itch of, okay, there's got to be more than what I'm doing. I had a time during COVID where I wanted to do more webinars. Kelly, you and I met during that time. And I couldn't tell you, like, it was a great webinar. I couldn't tell you any of the other people that we were working with on that series off the top of my head, maybe one other person, but
Bedelia,
yes. Yes, but you and I stuck, and
yeah.
I feel like it started this sort of trajectory for us in terms of like, okay, when is the timing right? I started coaching, And now I'm in this world where coaching feels like the stability. I have these contract roles in recruiting, and I still have, like, you know, one toe in the pool of I want to keep my expertise current with the job market and tech careers and all of that. But, you know, now coaching has become the through line on top of this magnificent 13-year recruiting career that I've had. So, I feel like I always come back to why I enjoyed my initial role in recruiting so much, and it was the people component. And I feel like in everything that I do going forward, it's really about the people and how I can make that one-on-one individual impact, whether that's with coaching or with my candidates. And really excited to see where this path ahead leads. But that's kind of kept me grounded through the whole thing. So yeah,
I think that's a good example. I think it's more of a story than maybe expected, but I think it's a good example of hitting the notes of the through line of working with people and wanting to support them. The other thing I'd like to point out for anyone watching or listening is that although it may have been a little bit longer than people expected, if you were listening, I think, Chez, you did a really good job of giving very clear markers of where you could pick up and leave off. You connected all of those with the through line of working with people and how it led to coaching, but very easily, if the audience was interested in your expertise at agency, you could just focus on agency. If it was interested in tech, you could have focused on the tech companies. So, like, all the elements were there. And if you needed to tailor that, it would be very easy to pick out the segments because they still all relate to people.
Yeah. And I think, you know, if I were to have scripted this a little bit more, obviously it would be tighter on time. I would maybe name drop the companies a little bit more in the tech careers. But I feel like I sort of centered on, like, the beginning, the middle, and then the now.
Yeah.
And I feel like that might be helpful for people to just think about the chronological of, like, okay, what's relevant? What are, like, the sort of pins in the marker?
Yeah, it's the roadmap.
Yeah.
I like it.
I get to hear yours.
Yeah, mine, I think mine's a roadmap, road trip, pinball machine. But essentially, my through line has always been communication and education. And like many people will say, it's very hard to figure out what that is until after you've had the years of experience, and then you look back. So on reflection, I went to university to teach. I taught all ages, regular ed, special ed, everything from being a nanny all the way through 18-year-olds in high school. And I realized I didn't want to be a public school teacher. So after getting my degree, I took a chance at a startup with 4 people in it and figured I'd learn how to build a business, and it was in creative services. I started doing production to learn the business, then did sales, spent 10 and a half years in creative services doing print production, worked with record labels, worked with beauty companies. It was incredible. And then got really tired of getting yelled at because a postcard or an invite was trimmed a quarter of an inch off of where it should be. I was also hitting 30 and it was getting a little bit weird. And a friend said, it's very interesting you're always in the middle. You're good at sales and you have a personality with people, but you also organize everything and decide and choose who works on your stuff. You should try recruiting. And side note for anyone listening, I don't know anyone that ever said I want to be in recruiting or talent. Every single person I know it was suggested to them.
Someone else.
It either fits or it doesn't, because it's a mountain of a whole lot of no's being ambiguous in the middle of people and just chasing that alignment. So I got into recruitment in 2008 in November, right in the middle of the big recession and the crash. It was the most corporate. I hated it. I cried on the bus on the way into Manhattan, but I liked helping people. And I felt good about defending the 20 minutes I spent on a call with someone when the boss said, they're not going to get the job, you should get off the phone. There was something about that fed me. It reminded me of when I was working with the young kids and I would show them how to tie their shoe and then I would see them doing it on their own. It was it made me feel like I was doing good with people, right? And out of the spotlight, which is kind of where I like to be. So fast forward, I got into recruiting. My next few years in New York, I worked in a few agencies, so I got exposure to different clients. I started with creative recruiting because I had just spent 10 years in creative services. So it was the same network of people, except instead of asking them, do we have an album release party or a billboard to do or a campaign, I said, do you want a new job? Same network, different ask. So be smart when you're doing pivots. I enjoyed that. And then I hit a point where I knew I wanted to try to slow down. I quit my job and gave over a month's notice, found someone to drive cross country with, left New York, drove to Los Angeles, and figured if my job was to get people jobs, I can figure this out too. So sometimes, like you said, when you're young, you do things.
Yeah.
And you just give it a shot. I landed at General Assembly and built their jobs program. And I basically taught an entire generation of students who were converting their careers and doing transitions and pivots to become developers and product managers and UX designers. I taught them how to get jobs from a recruiter's perspective with 100% success rate. After that, I built tech recruiting for the National Football League, which was very cool. And then I realized, you know, I've always wanted to travel. I want global teams. I should take my own advice. So I started working my network. And that's when Booking.com hired me. And they asked me to move to Seattle to, do some fixing of the US tech recruitment program. And part of that job offer was, we're going to bring you to Amsterdam every 2 weeks, quarter as part of the role. And I was like, okay, sure. Yay. So I did that. And in less than a year, they moved me to Amsterdam when I lived in the Netherlands. I enjoyed that experience. I had relocated people across the US and across EMEA many times. I relocated myself across the US. The international relocation was different for me. And it was a perspective of being at a company that owned my immigration that I hadn't had before. And I found myself wanting more freedom than that. So I left the Netherlands, went back to Los Angeles, and spent about a year trying to figure out what business I could build by myself and what it would mean and what my through line is. And my through line was figuring out how to help people and give them a better experience than I had. And, pay some rent. So that was 6.5 years ago. But that's always been part of it. And my through line being education and communication has carried me all the way through. I come from a family of teachers. I went to university to teach. I studied it. It made me better and more organized in creative services, managing clients and managing productions of huge projects, of like national projects. It also made me very good as a recruiter because lots of times candidates and clients can't tell you what they want. Sounds like 2 to 5-year-olds, right? They don't really have the skills. By the way, lots of leaders can't tell you either. It made me a better recruiter in terms of my ability to communicate and let's call it educate, but get people moving in the same direction, right? And I find that it works now. Similar, same or similar to what we do with Allora Collective. Clients come to us. Sometimes we're figuring out what direction they can take. Sometimes we are helping them find their voice and amplify it. We are building confidence. Sometimes they know where they want to go, but they don't know how to get there. Everybody is different. And the way that I've always operated is the same way that we operate with Allora with all of our clients, which is I believe we all have fundamental skills and fundamental strategies that can work for almost everybody. But the key is to understand how someone learns first and how they perform at their best, and then adapt what you know to them.
Right.
So I feel like that's been the through line, and I hope nobody minds that I'm comparing adults to 2 to 5-year-olds, but like it fits.
I think it's relatable. Yeah. And that's not taking offense. We're not talking about age regression here. We're talking about mindset that is like way more similar than we realize, even on the learning something new, right? Somebody at 35 who's learning new skills is essentially the same as a 5-year-old that you're walking through, not in a bad way, but new habits, new behaviors, I really love the fact that you gave us the full picture of where you started, where you are now, but you found a way to blend in your values and some of the emotions around your experience. I don't feel like I talked about emotion at all. But it fit with the story and I got more perspective on you. even the parts that I already knew, I feel like there was good color on the perspective. And this is how I approach with clients. And I'm folding in my NFL experience and GA and all of these things. It was, yeah, it's the other thing is, you know, a good tell me about yourself should be entertaining as well.
Yeah,
like one of the reasons why we tell people don't just give us the chronological on your resume is that's really boring, you know?
Yeah.
So adding the human element, I think is awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. I haven't done that in a while. It's an interesting thing. I feel like I covered why I'm here also. I feel like I comboed both in one. And as much good to have structure, I kind of like the way that we're just loosely doing this. Because like you said, when you know yourself and you're speaking honestly about who you are, not just what you do, but when you take the time to figure out how you got where you are, I feel like the story comes out better and it comes out more natural and it's more memorable.
Yeah.
You know, like those small things. And those small things are important to me. The idea that I was like, I'm going to quit my job. When I quit my job in New York, I didn't have someone to drive across country with. And I remember when I gave notice, my boss was like, do you have a job there? And I was like, no. She's like, are you sure about this? We're still friends to this day. She was like, are you sure about this? I'm like, yes. I'm like, and you know what? And I told my mom the same thing. I said, I'm going to try Los Angeles because I went to visit a friend for a weekend. And I'm like, you guys work and this is the weather like every day? This is how this works?
72, baby.
Back then, this was before climate change shifted a little bit, right? And I was like, listen, it's 72 and sunny. If it doesn't work, I'm just going to hang out on the beach. We'll see what happens, you know?
Yeah.
What have I got to lose? But that's kind of the thing that falls in your lap. And the way that your network brings you around, the General Assembly, I was referred to them by a candidate who she didn't even get the job at Google when I was recruiting for Google through the agency, but she remembered me because I was trying to help her. And when that job didn't, you know, work out, I referred her other places. And people remember you, you know, people remember how you make them feel.
Yeah.
And you should go check them out. So I went to an open house and I was like, I like what you're doing, but you're taking $10,000 from people. How are they getting jobs? And they go, we don't know. And I was like, huh? So that's going to come out great in the transcript. Huh? So I met the man who was in charge of it, the guy who was one of the funnest, best managers I've ever had, in a coffee shop in Venice Beach. And he was like, I'm not really sure what we're going to do with this, but we have to figure something out. And I said, give me a day. And I went back, no deck, fancy kids, no Claude, no nothing, nada. I sketched on a legal pad what I thought were the most important things that I would tell my candidates as a recruiter.
Yeah.
And he was like, that looks good. Can we turn it into a program? And I was like, sure. And I dug through all my old EDU notes, and we ended up with an 8-workshop series program and pulling things back and forth. But that evolves into other things. Like at NFL, I didn't just recruit. I built Talent Act. I did diversity programs. We did other programs for that. And then I did the same thing in Seattle. So it's funny how these things open you up, right? Just by connecting. You've had an interesting progression too, from the agency to Lever to Reddit, pre and post IPO, Coinbase, and then to BetterUp. I mean, you've seen so many different systems over 13 years. You've not only done engineering, you've really seen like what go-to-market teams do and like high growth, live and direct. You've seen it all. And even with your PHR certification, congratulations, by the way, on that. How do you feel like all of that feeds into your future? All of those elements combined.
I think it's also people focused. I think the PHR, I'm actually in the weeds with getting recertified right now because I realize that it's up for extension end of September. So I have like less than 8 weeks to get another 50 hours of recertification webinar credits because I don't want to have to retest. I got the PHR because I thought that I wanted to transition into HR roles at the time. Actually, I interviewed internally for an HR VP role at Reddit that I thought I was going to get, that I did not get.
HRBP, for anyone who doesn't know, is HR business partner.
Yeah. So basically, I was interviewing for the role that was my counterpart dealing with the same team, so engineering, but on the HR side. So that role would have focused more on workforce planning, on performance management, employee support, whether it was, somebody being put on a performance improvement plan, or if somebody was needing to navigate getting to go on leave, various different forms of leave. I was curious about it, and I think it was a good experience. And then after I didn't get the transfer, I thought, let me get the certification, and if I come for it again, this will add value. And what I found is the certification without the HR experience does not qualify me for HR roles. It's like talent and people operations HR are continuing to become more and more separate.
Very much.
I don't necessarily actually think I wanted to move into HR. I think I just wanted a change. So
if you for a role like that now, that was more HR or more systems, how would you pitch yourself for that?
Yeah.
Because I see it in your background of how it would make sense as a next evolution.
And I still fold it in, and I have actually my pitch notes that I was using from my most recent job search. Check out my blog on that. Shameless plug. So I do actually mention it in that. So for my tell me about yourself, if I was interviewing, I would start with, I'm a PHR certified talent partner with 13 years scaling technical and go-to-market teams at high-growth companies from seed stage to public. The through line in my career is I don't just fill recs, I'm building systems that make hiring work. At Wire, which was a crypto company that I worked for, I built the recruiting function from scratch as the founding recruiter. At Lever, I helped to redesign the R&D hiring process, cutting time to hire and raising offer acceptance. And then at Reddit, before the IPO, I helped scale our ads engineering team 438% from 65 to almost 350 people. I partnered with VPs on org design and workforce planning. And then most recently, before my current role at Coinbase, I ran security engineering and maintained a 90% offer acceptance rate while upskilling on AI automation throughout the entire recruiting workflow. So current role, I'm at BetterUp supporting R&D and AI engineering hiring. And really what I would look for in a next opportunity is staff level impact, where I'm able to own both hiring outcomes and also partner with leadership, not just on execution, but on strategy as well.
You're hired.
Thanks.
Offers in your inbox. I like it. I like how you immediately leaned into the context of how all of that leads forward. You didn't even have to get to the end of staff level and what you want to do before I was already thinking about it based on how you told that. I feel like that was 10 out of 10.
Thanks.
I think we've gone through all of our notes. I would say, we talked a little bit about, in the beginning, we talked about where we belong. And I feel like I touched on that in the last explanation of how my career has unfolded. But I think if someone were to ask me.
Your pitch.
Yeah. If someone were to ask me where I belong, I belong working as closely with people as possible. I would belong, if I'm thinking about traditional structures of companies, I would belong on a founding team, a very small team. I would belong as similar to what you said, as a staff level or a principal level, because that's an individual contributor role. And your impact is based on the influence you have over other people and how you interact with them, not so much the way that a people manager is doing OKRs and KPIs and performance reviews. That's not really my lane. My lane is on the other side, where you're getting closer with people and really helping them rise and level up, and you have the space to give them that attention. I also belong in a place where people are similar. I belong working with people similar to me, where nobody wants to be the one who knows everything. I never want to be the one who knows everything.
Yeah.
That's not a place where I want to be. I'm all for culture add, not fit. I don't think fit is a thing.
Yeah.
I think sacrificing learning from others for either speed or something more quantitative versus qualitative is a mistake. And I think it doesn't let you get to a place where people are moving together, like collectively. Forgive the collective, but that's the place where I would belong on a sincere team, I guess is how I think, if
I
that
love
makes sense.
that. Yeah.
And that's how I feel about our clients. You know, I learn from my clients as much as I learn from them. They're experts in what they do. We're experts in what we do.
Yeah. Yeah.
But both sides are approachable enough and open enough to come together and blend our expertise to get to the next step.
Right.
Exactly. That's how I would look at it. How would you say where you belong? What would you talk about?
Yeah, I think what you had touched on, I like how flexible it was. Of you're not necessarily looking, I mean, you're not having this conversation with a prescriptive role in mind, but you're telling people, you know, the value and kind of where you see yourself and what's complementary, which I love. I feel like I'm kind of in that direction now too, of, you know, where I belong as a future sort of forward facing is still this sort of people component, and knowing that the industries, my role itself may change. Like I've already changed, you know, from connector to coach, and you know, now I'm thinking about in sort of a macro level, like facilitating, right? Maybe I'm not necessarily always the person running the thing, but how am I allowing for things to become possible? And then, you know, when I zoom out even further of like, what matters to me with the people component is really this element of continuous learning from others, supporting others in their continuous learning, and how that contributes to well-being. And so I see that being something that I continue to pursue as sort of, you know, both professionally, how can I enable more of that? And then also in the sort of life's purpose, you know, my personal life as well.
Yeah. I think there's a rhythm and a flow to working with people, right? And I think each element compounds that and changes it. The fact that we're able to work remotely so well and async so well, it's not an accident, right? For anyone who's listening, in the beginning, you have to talk a lot.
Yeah.
You can't really skip the corners. You have to understand how someone thinks, because if I can see a response and I can think, I know what Shay's going to say, or I know what she's going to think about that. Or, you know, and I know you can do the same, because sometimes we'll see something and we'll message each other going, I know what you're about to say. Right. Like, but that's part of having a team that I think is seamless. That's, you know, I think that's the most beautiful part. And I think a lot of clients will talk about roles and jobs, and especially when we're drafting questions for their interviewers. And I feel like we always bring them back and remind them that they need to be asking questions about how these people will work and communicate with them. Because it could be a dream job on a dream product, but if you're working with people that you don't understand and they micromanage and you want to be autonomous, or vice versa, or whatever it is, it's not going to, there's going to be too much interruption for you to like process through that. I really like what we did today. I feel like if we get comments, we can always do something a little bit more structured with Tell Me About Yourselves. And I think that's where we started. But I think keeping it loose gives people an understanding of the variety of what Tell Me About Yourself can be. And the idea is you just have to like know who you are. You have to think about the different, like the different facets of yourself or the different aspects of yourself. So you can just have a loose conversation. And there might be another day where I would only talk about companies I work for or my years in recruiting and things that are more structured. But like you said, I could be heat or hormones. I don't know. But what I said sounded more on the people side and more on the emotional side. And there, sometimes we're emotional, and that's okay. You know, it's okay. So I like it. I like when we turn the camera on ourselves and let people get to know us a little bit more. And that's something that, we do with clients, where we build relationships with them all the time. We're not above the work. We do the same thing other people do. We're both always having conversations with others where we're talking about ourselves. I'm moving to a new city or a new country. I'm talking about myself. Pick a language. So
Right.
we're all getting there, whether we're interviewing or not. But yeah, it's really about telling your own story and showing up as how you feel comfortable. If it's for a job interview, then you are going to tailor it for that audience, and there's going to be little aspects of that. But it's really helpful to practice with a person. I find most people might try to practice with an automated tool, and they usually come to us and say it's not landing or it's not working, because there's things when you talk to a person, like body language, even remotely through video, you have chemistry that you don't get talking to a tool. Which, by the way, I don't know if anyone knows who's listening to this, but fun fact, Shane and I have never met in person, and we weren't together for 3 years.
Overdue.
So when you trust yourself to know yourself, and you trust yourself to be open and, just kind of let relationships build, you can have chemistry like that, and you can have that kind of a flow. What do you think? You want to do a little TLDR? You always do the good TLDRs. You're better at it than me.
I'm happy to TLDR. I want to touch on a point before closing out that you mentioned. The first part of Tell Me About Yourself is really going inward and thinking back on your own story and jotting down those notes, because I think a lot of people, they go into the Tell Me About Yourself dry, and then they're doing the retroactive thinking in the moment. Actually, even if you spend a little bit of time, 30 minutes does a world of prep of just jotting down, look at your resume, jot down what you remember, jot down your why in between the moves that you made. It does a world of difference. And so I think, to close us out, the Tell Me About Yourself is a question that is always going to come up in life, in work. I think it's a really easy thing to start on your own. And I think from the recruiting side, how to stand out are the ones who, like we've talked about, really own their narrative, but also directly connect it to the relevance of the job that they applied to without you having to ask those follow-up questions. It frames the entire conversation. If you use it well, it's your competitive advantage to drive your candidacy, to find a mentor. There are so many ways that you can use it. And I think it's a missed opportunity if you're not doing the prep. So if you're
interviewing, they don't need to know your work history. You can assume they read your resume. Let's just pretend everyone's doing their job. You can assume that. Tell me about yourself. Give them a reason and a clear example that connects you to the role. Tell them why they're talking to you that day.
Yeah,
that's fine.
Exactly.
Right? If it was a singles mixer, then the Tell Me About Yourself is something a little bit maybe more personal. If it's in America, it might be, what do you do? If it's in another country, it might be, where did you holiday last? It's reading the room is the essential, right? Your Tell Me About Yourself will be a little bit different for a recruiter who's checking boxes than it would be if, let's say, you had a referral and your first conversation is with a high-level manager, like a head of. Different scenario. So like Chez said, a little practice goes a long way. And I think a lot of people skip that. They study the company, they study the job, and they forget to study themselves. Which, you can have all the sample questions if you want, but if you know yourself, you'll be able to answer any question they have.
Totally. Yeah. So I think it's an exciting opportunity. If for anybody listening who's like, oh, wow, I haven't thought about any of this before, I don't know which version I would tell. I've been using the same old crusty, dusty Tell Me About Yourself, and it needs a refresh. We're happy to help. Come talk to us. You can book a free consultation at alloracollective.com. We have tons of resources, Kelly's blog about this on our website. We are happy to support you.
There's a search tool on the website. You can search the blogs. There are plenty of blogs on there. Like Shay said, you can book a free consultation. Follow us on LinkedIn, connect with us on LinkedIn. Our content is there as well. And we also have a weekly email list. So we wish everybody all of the confidence in the world with a Tell Me About Yourself. Just consider your audience and go with it. You might just make a friend here and there. And you never know how it can help. Fun fact, before I left New York, hold on, this is actually a good example. This is not quite a tell me about yourself, but it's a little something else. I had an interview that I was preparing for, and when I looked up the person that was interviewing me, I noticed they were from New York City, and I saw things about the New York Yankees baseball in their profile. This is way back in the day. I positioned my camera because I had 2 black and white photos of Yankees, like Joe DiMaggio Yankee, Mickey Mantle, that were gifted to me from one of my creative services clients. I positioned my camera so they were right behind my head. First thing the interviewer said, "Where'd you get those?" Our 30-minute call was like 5 minutes about my recruiting skills, and the whole thing was about the Yankees, and I moved forward to the round. So like, those are small things. If you're on set or if you're somewhere, people are blurred in camera. Yeah, but if you see something in someone's background, if you went to the same university, if you know someone in common, if someone referred you to the job, say it. I'm really glad Chez was able to introduce me or refer me for the job so I could talk to you today. These inboxes are crazy. Thank you so much. There's nothing wrong with mentioning those things. Again, book a free consultation. If you're looking for a coach, we're happy to help. I think everybody deserves a little bit of help because they don't teach us this stuff.
Yeah.
At least they never taught us. All right. I'll see you soon. Bye.